This video will help you plan and prepare for a new installation of SAP Data Services and SAP Information Steward, version 4.x. The focus is on new installations, not upgrades or migrations. You will learn about choosing a platform and deciding whether to install to one or multiple computers. You will also learn what happens during installation. Please note that this video covers installation of both Data Services and Information Steward. If you are installing only Data Services, you can ignore the topics related to Information Steward. Let's get started. Before you can install Data Services and Information Steward, you must install Information Platform Services, or the Business Intelligence Platform, which provides platform services such as security, scalability, and high availability for Data Services and Information Steward. BI is the SAP Business Objects Business Intelligence Platform. IPS is the compact version of the full BI platform. IPS includes the platform components that Data Services and Information Steward need. The IPS or BI platform installation includes the Central Management Server, or CMS, which is a key component required for Data Services and Information Steward installation. When the CMS is in place, you can install Data Services. Data Services installation includes Job Server, a key server component. When Data Services installation is complete, you can install Information Steward. Information Steward also requires CMS, and in addition, if you are doing a primary install of Information Steward, it requires the Data Services Job Server components. Data Services Job Server provides the engine processes that perform Information Steward's data insight, data profiling, and validation rule tasks. There are 3 steps involved in deployment of Data Services and Information Steward. 1. Deciding whether to use IPS or BI platform. 2. Deciding whether to install to a single machine or set up a distributed deployment. 3. Preparing the Central Management Server and repository. Let's look at each of these steps more closely, starting with choosing a platform. If you don't have or use BI applications, then the choice is straightforward. Use IPS as the platform to deploy Data Services and Information Steward. If you use BI applications, then you have 2 options. With option 1, you install Data Services and Information Steward on a separate IPS instead of installing them on the BI platform, which is used for your BI applications. This is the best practice and most common setup because it allows the flexibility to upgrade Data Services and Information Steward independently from the BI platform and BI applications in the future. It is very important to note that CMS1 and CMS2 are not clustered. They are installed independently and operate as separate servers. Also, you can enable BI Launchpad users to access Information Steward by configuring the BI Launchpad settings from within the Information Steward application. Now let's look at option 2. All applications are deployed on one BI platform, and therefore there's a tight dependency between BI, Data Services, and Information Steward version compatibility. This is optimal for small deployments or proof of concepts that use compatible versions and do not need the latest product features. Next, let's see how to deploy Data Services and/or Information Steward on one or multiple machines. Please note that from this point on, we will talk about IPS as platform and expand it to show how components can be distributed. In a single machine scenario, all of the server processes are vertically scaled to reduce cost. All server components for IPS, Data Services, and Information Steward are installed on the same machine. Sizing the machine is important in this scenario, and you can refer to PAM, the Product Availability Matrix, for sizing details. In a distributed scenario, server processes can be horizontally scaled to improve performance. In this setup, server components are distributed between 2 or more networked machines. Now let's discuss the distributed scenarios for Data Services. Using Server 1 as the master server, where all components are installed on one machine, we will see how to distribute and scale Data Services components. The CMS will be created on the master server when you install the IPS Platform Services components. A Server Intelligence Agent, SIA, will also be created during the IPS installation. In order to install the Data Services Management Console, IPS Web Tier is required on the master server. You can separate the data services server components, the job server and access server, to run on a separate machine than the IPS platform. This gives you a way to set up multiple data services servers and server groups to increase performance. To install data services job servers and access servers on these additional servers, none of the IPS platform components are required locally on the machine. You can distribute the web applications to run on a different machine. In this scenario, IPS Web Tier must be installed first before installing the Data Services Management Console. This is because Management Console is deployed to the same web application server used by IPS. You may scale the web applications onto multiple machines by using a load balancer, but this type of scaling is not very typical for Management Console because it is primarily used for browser-based administration and does not have a large number of users. Now let's discuss the distributed and scaling scenarios for Information Steward. In a distributed deployment, the first installation of Information Steward is called the primary install. Any subsequent installations of Information Steward components are called an expanded install. To do a primary install of Information Steward, the server must already have IPS and Data Services Job Server installed. Using Server 1 as the master server, we will see how to distribute and scale Information Steward components. Scaling for Data Insight servers. This scenario expands the number of computers to run Information Steward's Data Insight profiling and rule tasks. This requires a local Data Services job server to provide the engine processes. You must configure a Data Services job server and associate it with the Information Steward repository. Use this scenario to provide load balancing and parallel execution for Data Insight profile and rule tasks. Scaling for metadata management. This scenario expands the number of computers to handle metadata management integrator sources. Use this scenario to provide high availability when running integrator sources that consume a lot of resources and might take hours to collect metadata for the metadata management module of Information Steward. This requires Platform Processing Service and Platform Scheduling Service of IPS to be installed locally. During IPS installation, you must use the existing remote CMS on Server 1. This creates a local SIA, the Server Intelligence Agent, node that points to the master CMS. For more information about scaling other Information Steward components, such as Cleansing Package Builder or Web Application, refer to the Master Guide. Next, let's look at how to prepare for installation of Data Services and Information Steward. Data Services installation involves three major steps. 1. Validation consists of system-level prerequisite checks and validating the user input for connecting the CMS, repository database, and so on. Before starting the installation, perform the required setup in your landscape so that each validation step can pass. If the prerequisites are missing on the system, the installer will either stop or will install only the qualified features. 2. Installation involves copying files. Also, EIM APS services and the Data Services web application are deployed. 3. Configuration involves setting up the repository and job server. This configuration is mandatory in order to use Data Services and can be done either during or after installation. During Data Services installation, you choose from two installation modes. The first option, Install with Default Configuration, performs validation, installation, and configuration, which creates a new Data Services repository and a default job server. The Data Services repository is registered in the Central Management Console, the CMC, and also associated with the default job server. The second option, Install without configuration, performs validation and installation. Configuration does not occur during installation. Instead, the configuration steps must be performed after installation in order to use Data Services. Let's look at some specific items that must be set up to install Data Services with the default configuration. Platform. Before you install Data Services, you must have the IPS platform in your landscape. During Data Services installation, you specify the Central Management Server, the CMS, to connect to and provide an administrator username and password. Data Services repository. Ensure that a supported version of the ODBC driver is installed to establish connectivity to the database that you plan to use for your data services repository. If your database type is Oracle or MySQL, the installer will ask you to provide a supported version of JDBC driver as well. For repository creation to be successful, the database user must have appropriate permissions to perform various tasks. There may be additional requirements for each specific database type used for the repository. For details, refer to the installation guide and ensure that these requirements are met. Data Services Job Server. A data services repository is mandatory in order to create a job server, but you don't need to provide any additional input here. A default job server is created and associated to the repository created during installation. Data Services System Service. Lastly, you need to provide a user account with which to run the Data Services System Service. If you choose to install without configuration, the second and third steps are optional at installation time, but are required when you configure the Data Services repository and job server post-installation. Just like Data Services installation, Information Steward installation involves three major steps: validation, installation, and configuration. During Information Steward installation, configuring the Information Steward repository is always performed as part of a primary installation. During Information Steward installation, you choose an installation mode, either primary or expanded. When you are installing Information Steward for the first time, choose Primary Install to configure the Information Steward repository during the installation. One of the prerequisites for Primary Install is the Data Services Job Server component on the local system. Choose Expanded Install if you already have an up-to-date version of the Information Steward repository. The Expanded Install option lets you install Information Steward application features without configuring the repository. Setting up the platform and Information Steward repository for a primary install of Information Steward is much like setting up for a data services installation. Note that when you specify the database connection for the Information Steward repository, make sure it is not the same database you used for the CMS or data services repositories. With an expanded install, you need not provide any database connection information, as this type of install doesn't have to configure an Information Steward repository. The following resources contain detailed information to help you plan and prepare for data services and Information Steward deployments. Be sure to watch the step-by-step videos that walk you through installing data services and Information Steward. We hope you found this overview helpful. Thanks for watching.